In today's video, we're going to discuss playing a double stroke roll. Now, I can tell you firsthand as a teacher, the double stroke roll is one of the most difficult things to teach people. And one reason for that is because I can emphasize allowing the stick to rebound over and over and over again, but one thing I can't physically do is make a person feel what it's like for the stick to rebound. So when most people learn a double stroke roll, what ends up happening is that both hands play pretty tensely, or we physically play both hits. And I'm exaggerating that a little bit just because this is what I see a lot of times. If I want to play a good double stroke roll, you can tell that that sounds a lot more graceful than if I physically play both hits. And the reason being is because I'm utilizing rebound on the drum pad or the snare drum. How do I do that? The first thing is we have to understand that the stick should be doing the bulk of the work, not us. So a lot of it comes down to how are we going to hold the drumstick. And when I play a double stroke roll, I prefer to have my hands in kind of an American grip, but really utilizing a French style where I rely heavily on my thumbs. And so when I hold my stick, this is a Vic Firth stick, and I'm just going to put my thumb on that flag, okay? And down here, I'm going to have all three fingers lined up. For me, I tend to not use my index finger too much, just because for me, my money with holding my stick is between my thumb and my middle finger at the first joint, for me personally. Okay, but even if you use your index finger right here, your first finger, what you want to do is you want to allow the stick to just bounce off the playing surface. And what I'm doing is I'm just using this first joint on my middle finger as a bed for the stick to sit in. And while the stick is on there, my thumb is very relaxed. Notice that my thumb is not hinged like this, but just relaxed and flat. Practice that and see what happens and see the amount of bounces you can get from that. Now, one thing we want to consider is with a double stroke roll, we're trying to get 2 hits out of each hand. And what I just showed you, if you can allow that stick to be free enough to bounce multiple times, I probably got 5 or 6 bounces out of that. Well, if I just take my thumb and apply a little bit of pressure, not a lot, but a little bit of pressure, I can manipulate the stick to do what I want. So then if I say, okay, I would only like to have 3 hits. I'm going to go from this to this. Okay? And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of at the end creating a little bit of compression to determine how many hits I want. So the main idea here is if we can get 5, 6 different bounces out of that, surely we can do 2 for a double stroke roll. So let's start in the opposite direction of where we want to be and let the stick bounce a lot of times and then bring it into just 2. So with both hands, you would be just practice bouncing. And then as you get further along, then you start to take it, you use that thumb to make them sound even. You want your double stroke roll. Sometimes I use the analogy of like a machine gun. You've got to use your thumb so the second hit doesn't suffer or struggle. So you don't want it to sound like this, where you have only an accented first hit. Both hits have to be nice and even. One thing to consider is that the double stroke roll I like to think of as being more of like the female or the graceful type of roll. You've got a single stroke roll, which is more of the masculine. So you've got more aggressive, and then you've got, which has a nicer sound to it. If I do that on the snare drum, single stroke roll, more masculine. Double stroke roll. So I'm really using my thumb and the back fingers to make that happen. That being said, one more final thought. When you're playing a double stroke roll, a lot of times I hear people play a double stroke roll and the overall sound of it sounds kind of random. So let's say you have one measure where you're supposed to play a roll through that whole measure. So let's say you're thinking of or trying to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. What I hear people doing sometimes is just there's no real rhyme or reason or pulse to what they're playing. It's just kind of a random. And you don't really know where you're at within that measure. So my suggestion is this, is that if you have that measure of 4 beats, you have to play a roll. Think of 16th notes. So you'd be thinking 1E into 2E into 3E into 4E into 1, 2, 3, 4, 1E into 2E into 3E into 4E into 1. If you take single strokes and play that, 2, 3, 4, and then you just double the hands. So instead of 1E into 2E into, you just double up in your hands. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, one more time. Okay, so again, 16th notes, but doubled up, and what that does is it gives your roll a really nice pulse, and it gives you a definite beginning point and an ending point. One final thought. When you're playing a double, and I've addressed this in some of the other videos as well, to have a good sound, where do you want your sticks to be? You want your sticks to be in the center most of the time. If you're looking to play a different dynamic, maybe you want to put them up here a little bit more, but you can't have one hand up here and one hand down here. It just isn't going to sound as good and as consistent if both sticks are right there. So, quick recap, when you're holding your stick, have a nice approach to get a rebound. And then use your thumb along with these back fingers to manipulate the stick into 2 hits. Same thing with the left hand. And then also allowing the sticks to rebound really nicely. And then the other thing is when you're playing a full roll is having a pulse over the course of the 16th notes. So you've got okay. One final thought while I'm thinking of it so I can do this all in one video and not break out for another one. If you're looking to work on your left hand, because a lot of times our weaker hand is our left. So what you can do, put your metronome on and have your metronome set up on 16th notes. Play your right hand on all of the 1E, 2E, 3E, 4E. The left hand would be on and. So in other words, you'd be going 1E, 2E, 3E, 4E, 1E, 2E, 3E, 4E, 1E, and a 2, and a 3, and a 4, and a 1, and a 2, and a 3, and a 4, and then you put it together for 2 measures. It would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. faster. Hope this video was helpful. Double stroke rule requires some patience, some practice, but you'll get there. See you next time.